It all started on an ordinary Tuesday, but nothing about that day was going to be ordinary for me. I was fighting for my life, and no one even noticed. Those words are still stuck in my mind, echoing with a rawness that I can't shake off. Imagine this. You're suffocating, gasping for air in front of people who should care, but they don't even see you. They don't even look at you. I was the one in pain, but it felt like they were all oblivious to it. Not one person cared. Not one person noticed. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. It was just a regular day at school. The usual chatter, the clicks of the pens on desks, the hum of a classroom full of students who barely ever look up. I had been battling a life-threatening medical condition for weeks, something I couldn't control. But that day, it was getting worse. Much worse. I tried to breathe, but each breath felt tighter, sharper, as if something was choking me from the inside. My head swam, my vision blurred. But the room? It was busy with life. Normal life. I glanced around. No one noticed the girl turning pale and shaking in her seat. No one saw me. Not my friends, not even the teacher. My throat felt like it was closing, and panic rose in me. How had it come to this? I wasn't just physically struggling, I was emotionally devastated by the cold indifference around me. I needed help, but I couldn't ask for it. It wasn't just about being ignored. It was about being invisible. My body was failing me, and I couldn't fight it alone anymore. Would anyone even help me? I managed to signal to my teacher, Mr. Cole, but he was absorbed in his lesson, completely unaware of my struggle. I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. It was as though the world was moving in slow motion, and I was being left behind. I knew something had to give. I couldn't wait around for someone to realize what was happening to me. This wasn't just a health issue anymore. This was about survival. If I stayed in that room, I wouldn't make it out. I could feel it. Every second I wasted, every second I stayed, felt like it could be my last. I knew I had to act. But how? How do you fight when the world refuses to see you? When everyone looks away and you're left to face it on your own? I couldn't answer that yet, but I could feel something inside of me stirring. Then, everything shifted. The room tilted. I staggered to my feet, barely able to hold myself up. My hands shook, my heart pounded, and I realized this was it. I had to make a choice. I wasn't going to wait for permission anymore. What if no one helps? Then I'll help myself. The dizziness was overwhelming. My breath was coming in short, shallow gasps, and I could feel my legs beginning to buckle beneath me. But I had no choice. I had to stand. Lily, my best friend, was sitting beside me, her eyes widening as she saw my struggle. "Sophie, what's going on? Are you okay?" she whispered urgently, trying to pull me back into my seat. I shook my head weakly, too dizzy to speak, but I was desperate for her to understand. It wasn't just a passing moment. It was something worse. But she didn't seem to grasp how bad it was. She looked at me with concern, but then her gaze flickered to Mr. Cole, waiting for him to act. He didn't. He didn't even notice. Lily was my closest friend. She was kind-hearted, always trying to look out for me, but even she couldn't fully understand what I was going through. She didn't live with the constant fear of my condition, the unknowns that haunted me every single day. I could feel the weight of her worry, but it wasn't enough. And the more I looked at the room, the more it hit me. I was on my own. Mr. Cole was standing at the front, droning on about something. I wasn't paying attention. His voice felt far away. He had always been a bit dismissive. I could remember the time I had mentioned feeling unwell in his class last semester. He brushed it off as just a phase and told me I was fine. But I wasn't fine. I had been struggling for weeks now, dealing with something that could kill me. And yet, here I was, in the middle of a classroom, surrounded by people who couldn't see what was happening right in front of them. My hands were clammy, and I felt the walls closing in. I was trying to stay calm, trying not to make a scene, but the pain was becoming unbearable. I glanced at Lily again, but she was still looking at Mr. Cole. She didn't understand what was happening. How could she? Even when she was worried, she still thought it was just another one of my episodes, something that would pass. But this wasn't something that would pass. This was real. I had been trying to hold it together, trying to push through it, but the more I fought, the weaker I became. I wanted to scream for someone to help, to shout that I was in danger, but my voice was lost. I didn't want to make a scene, but I felt my body betray me. Was this how it was going to end? I felt myself drifting, my vision fading. The room was spinning. I looked at Lily one last time. She was still talking to Mr. Cole, unaware of how close I was to passing out. The door felt miles away. I couldn't keep waiting for someone to notice. I had to act. Then it happened. The world went black for a moment. My legs gave out, and I collapsed. The classroom around me seemed to freeze. I heard Lily's voice, faint and distant, calling my name. But it was too late. I had already lost control. This was my breaking point. Would anyone notice now? I opened my eyes slowly, my vision blurry and disoriented. I was lying on the cold, tiled floor, surrounded by the panicked voices of my classmates. Lily was kneeling next to me, her hands shaking as she placed them on my shoulders. "Sophie, can you hear me?" Her voice cracked, and it pierced through the haze in my mind. I could barely keep my eyes open, but I could hear her, feel her, even though everything felt like a distant dream. But what struck me most was the complete silence that followed Lily's frantic words. No one else moved. No one else came to help. They just watched. I was lying there, gasping for air, with the entire room frozen in shock. And yet, I felt so incredibly alone. Mr. Cole finally turned around, his face unreadable. He saw me on the floor, but his eyes didn't widen in alarm. He didn't rush to my side. Instead, he adjusted his glasses and sighed, his voice stiff and cold. "Sophie, get up," he said, not a hint of concern in his tone. I looked up at him, disoriented and on the edge of panic. Get up? I could barely breathe, let alone move. Was he serious? Lily's eyes flicked between Mr. Cole and me, confusion written on her face. "Mr. Cole, something's wrong with Sophie. She can't breathe." Mr. Cole didn't respond immediately. He just shook his head and muttered under his breath, "You're probably just having an anxiety attack, Sophie. It happens. Take a seat." The words hit me like a slap. Anxiety attack? He hadn't seen the real problem. He hadn't seen the fear in my eyes. I wasn't having an episode. This wasn't something I could just shake off. And yet, that's exactly what he expected me to do. I felt the room closing in again, the panic rising within me. My throat tightened, and I realized no one here, not even the teacher who was supposed to help me, understood what I was going through. I was on my own. Why wasn't anyone helping? Lily's face crumpled in distress as she grabbed her phone, tapping furiously on the screen. "I'm calling an ambulance," she said, her voice trembling with fear. But something inside me snapped. I didn't want to wait anymore. The fear of suffocating in front of everyone, of feeling so utterly ignored, was suffocating me even more. As Lily called for help, I took a deep breath, forcing my shaking body to rise. It wasn't easy, but I managed to get up, my legs unsteady. I stood, trembling, and looked around the room, feeling everyone's eyes on me. I wasn't going to wait for them to rescue me. I was done with being ignored. The next words left my mouth before I could stop them. "I'm leaving. I'm not waiting here anymore." The room went dead silent. Every single eye was on me. No one expected it. No one knew what to say. But I was done. I wasn't going to stay and die in a room full of people who couldn't even see me. I was choosing to survive, on my own terms. As I turned toward the door, the whispers started. Some of the students looked shocked, others confused, but I didn't care. I couldn't stay in that room another second. Mr. Cole tried to stop me, his voice firm but lacking authority. "Sophie, get back to your seat. This is ridiculous." But I didn't listen. I pushed past him, walking as fast as my weak legs would carry me, toward the door. What would happen if I left? Could I make it out of the building on my own? Could I survive this on my own? I didn't know the answers, but I did know one thing. I couldn't trust anyone else to save me. It had to be me. As I stepped into the hallway, my legs almost gave out. My breathing was erratic, my body threatening to collapse. I reached out, leaning against the wall for support. What was I doing? Was I making the right choice? Could I even make it out of school alive? I didn't have the answers, but I was already too far gone to turn back. I had to keep going. And with that, I stumbled toward the exit, my hands shaking, heart pounding, my body pleading for rest, but my mind screaming to keep moving. The cool air hit my face as I stepped outside, but it didn't feel like relief. It was as if I had entered a new world, one that felt both terrifying and freeing at the same time. The sidewalk stretched before me, but it might as well have been a vast, endless road with no clear direction. I leaned against the side of the school building, gasping for air, clutching my chest as if I could force the breath to come faster. My head spun and my vision blurred again. I could feel my body threatening to give up, but there was no way I was going back inside. Not now. Not ever. I had made my choice. Now, I had to face the consequences. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I fumbled to pull it out. Lily had sent me several texts, panicked messages about the ambulance. But I couldn't risk waiting for help to arrive. I needed to take control. "I'm making my own way. I'm done waiting." I texted her back quickly, my fingers shaking. "I'm heading to the hospital. I'll be fine." The truth was, I wasn't fine. But I needed to believe that I could be. I glanced back at the school. I was leaving, walking away. But something deep inside me told me that what I was doing would change everything. But was it the right decision? I couldn't answer that yet. I just knew I had no other choice. As I took each unsteady step, I could hear the faint sound of the school bell ringing in the distance, signaling the end of class. Students started pouring out of the building, but no one noticed me. No one saw my struggle. That stung more than I'd care to admit. But I couldn't stop now. I kept walking, my legs heavy and weak. Every step felt like a small victory, but I could feel the exhaustion setting in. I had no idea if I could make it. Was this the right decision? I couldn't afford to second-guess myself. I had to keep going, had to reach the hospital, had to make it through this on my own. The closer I got to the edge of the school, the more the weight of my decision hit me. Would they even take me seriously once I got there? Was it too late? The hospital wasn't far, but with every step, I could feel my body slowing down. My vision blurred again, the world feeling like it was tilting to the side. I didn't know if I could make it. Would I even reach the door in time? I stumbled once more, barely catching myself on the wall of the nearest building. The air was growing colder, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My heart was pounding in my chest. I didn't know how much longer I could last. I kept moving, even though everything in me screamed to stop. Would anyone notice now? I had to get to the hospital, and fast. I made it to the hospital. Barely. When I walked through those sliding doors, I was barely able to keep myself upright. My breathing was a struggle, my body shaking uncontrollably from exhaustion. The receptionist looked up at me, her eyes widening in shock as I staggered toward her. I need help," I managed to rasp out, my voice weak and barely audible. The next few minutes were a blur. Nurses rushed to my side, pulling me into a nearby room, checking my vitals, trying to stabilize me. They moved quickly, efficiently, and I remember hearing snippets of their conversation. "She's close. We need to act fast." I felt a wave of fear wash over me. Had I waited too long? Would I make it? Then, one of the doctors came in, giving me a quick but thorough look-over. His face was serious, and I could see the concern in his eyes as he spoke to the nurses. "Her condition is more severe than we thought. If she hadn't come in today, we might have lost her. We'll need to monitor her closely." It hit me all at once. If I hadn't left the school when I did, I shuddered. I might not be alive right now. In that moment, I felt a deep relief. I had made the right choice. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't without its risks, but I had done what I needed to do to survive. I was lying in the hospital bed, breathing a little easier now that I was finally getting the care I needed. Lily called soon after I'd been admitted, and I could hear the relief in her voice when she found out I was okay. But it wasn't just physical relief I felt. It was emotional, too. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. When I looked up at the nurse as she adjusted my IV, I realized that I hadn't been completely alone. I had taken charge of my own survival, but there were still people who were willing to help. That felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. Back at school, the story spread quickly. My decision to leave the classroom in a medical emergency sparked a conversation about student safety. The administration came under fire for their lack of action, and Mr. Cole, the teacher who had dismissed my condition, was called in for a meeting with the principal. Lily told me that Mr. Cole had been reprimanded for not taking me seriously. "I never thought he'd get in trouble," she admitted, sounding surprised. Even though my decision caused some tension at school, it led to change. Teachers were now trained to recognize the signs of serious medical conditions, and the school began offering more resources for students in need. It wasn't the easy way, but it was the way that made a difference. A week later, I walked into school with my head held high. I felt stronger, more confident than I had in months. People were whispering about what had happened, but I didn't care. I wasn't just the girl who fought for her life anymore. I was the girl who chose to fight. And I would never again be invisible to myself. When I walked into class, I saw Lily sitting at her desk, and she smiled at me, proud, relieved. "You're a warrior," she said quietly as I took my seat. I smiled back, feeling the weight of everything I had gone through. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about taking control, about choosing to live on my terms. And in that moment, I knew that I would never let anyone, no matter who they were, make me feel invisible again.